Today on Locked On Rockies, the National Basketball Association world was shocked by a trade. Maybe the Colorado Rockies one that can relate to this one wasn't as big, but the feelings, the confusion, and just kind of the bad vibes of it all are certainly something Rockies fans can relate to.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 4th day of February in the year 2025. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here each and every day, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and the Locked On Rockies YouTube, where you can be part of the show. You can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. We love hearing what's on your mind. It's the best way to interact with the show. If you want to be part of the show, head on over to the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel and let me know what's on your mind. Today on the show, I wanted to talk about I don't want to talk too much about the obviously trade, the impacts in the NBA, but I think Rockies fans can really relate to Mavericks fans right now. And Mavericks fans and the Mavs have been a more successful team than the Rockies, when you compare them. But I think the situation they're in right now and the way the fans feel is eerily similar, especially as a recent anniversary of the trade. Of course, I'm talking about the Nolan Arenado trade to the St. Louis Cardinals. So I want to talk a little bit about that today. And we also got a really interesting what-if scenario from our YouTube comment section we'll talk about today. So we're still in the offseason. I know baseball's being played this month, spring training right around the corner. We'll get excited for it, and we'll get pumped up as it gets ever closer. But still, a team that hasn't made a lot of moves. So we're having an interesting conversation today, but I think this is going to be a good one. Before we dive into it all, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and there's no better way to get in on the action of Super Bowl 59 than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. All right, so obviously, what I'm mentioning here and what I'm talking about when it comes to the trade and Rockies fans and Mavericks fans relating to is the fact that Luka Dončić was traded to the Lakers, and in a move where it's a young player in their prime after they were just in the finals and have been seeing some success, and we're building back up, mixed in with the GM just making a big scene of it and injecting himself into the narrative and making part of the story about him as well. All of that, when I was watching it break, was just reminded me exactly of how I felt when Nolan Arenado was traded. I could put myself in the position of the diehard, lifelong Mavericks fans that just felt so betrayed by their sport, by their team, because again, I think what the Rockies have been bad, folks, but I mean, again, they're my team. Like it is the team I care about the most out of any professional sports team on the planet. And I know that's crazy to say, but why else would I be talking about them all the time, Anyway, when something like that happens, when your team makes a move that is, and again, it's not just that this was a big move, and it's not like, hey, you moved, just same thing. It's not like with it's when the move is universally criticized and frowned upon, because that's exactly what happened in the Nolan Arenado trade. Exactly what happened. As soon as the details were revealed for the trade of Nolan Arenado, the Rockies were getting roasted. The Rockies have been roasted for that trade for 4 years. not just performance on the field or anything. I'm talking reputation. And that stems into how many times now during the off seasons have we talked about the Rockies' reputation being a bad one, especially amongst the GMs and especially amongst the people in baseball when it comes to making those deals. So to see that play out for Mavs fans in real time just brought me back. I mean, I remember exactly where I was. I remember exactly what was happening. I was driving in my car, and I remember I was yelling and slamming my steering wheel to myself in the car. So it just the big reason I bring this up here is it just sucks. And it's hard to bounce back from this as a fan. I mean, you saw the reception, you saw the amount of people, you saw how many folks showed up to express their disgust really with the trade and disappointment. And it just flashed me back to the Rockies were in the playoffs for back-to-back seasons for the first time in history. They had an elite infield with some of the game's best players and would-be best players for the time period going forward, even with the Trevor Story injury issues. You never know. But you can certainly say keeping DJ LeMahieu would have helped. And if that rotation stayed healthy and if they added to that rotation, the Rockies were finally establishing and setting themselves up to be a team that was going to be competitive in the NL West, was going to be a team that was going to be competitive going forward because it had a core. It had multiple pieces of elite level talent that were going on there. Charlie Blackmon was playing the best baseball of his career. The Rockies were the best team to start the pandemic shortened season and had a chance to win a wacky one. But the behind the scenes stuff was so messed up, and they never did any addition to build up on that team. You allowed everything to sour with Nolan Arenado, and then you made that move. That's, big difference there as well is the Luka and the Mavs, like that one hurts worse because there was the disgruntled wasn't there. The Luka was there was no sign that he was upset at all. Now I'm with everyone that there's more to this story behind the scenes deeper down. I mean, there has to be something more foundational at its core here. Because that's what you could say with the Rockies. Look, the Rockies eventually got rid of Nolan Arenado because the relationship soured. It wasn't working. And eventually it came to a point of it was Bridich, it was Nolan. One of them is going to stay. But we lost both of them in a very similar time period. But when it's like that, when it's a guy that's going to sign a supermax and a guy that was bought in and a guy that was, it's again, Luka grew up there. Luka, got connected through to the United States and what it's like to be here through Dallas. And for it to just go that way, that's what not to mention the magnitude of the player and the time. Arenado was a star at that point. MVP season's close to him right after the trades. But for it to rip your heart out like that, it's what makes it's one of these real life things that makes being a sports fan hard. Because this is something we voluntarily put our time and money, especially, two of our most important things. And we put a lot of it, a lot of time, a lot of basketball. Especially these two sports, 162 baseball games, 80-something basketball games, plus the playoffs if you make it. So for it to just go down like that, it just brings this reality check of just like, and I think this is, you'll see it with a lot of Mavs fans of just like, do I really want to care about this that much if the people in charge have different values, different, different understanding of what the team should be than I should? And winning those people back takes a lot of time. And I want to explain a little bit more on that here in segment number 2, but it's exactly what the Rockies are dealing with right now. How do you rebuild the interest in the team after a move like that? And in the Rockies case, how do you do it when you're not winning? Let's talk about that coming up in segment number 2 of today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. Yes, folks, right around the corner. It is here. It is time. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're interested in locking in during the game, the live betting feature helps you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. That means you could do something super easy, super likely, super simple. Hit that and get those bonus bets for the rest of the live betting, or getting ahead on something for maybe some baseball futures. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Just $5 bet. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB. Our guy Sully breaking down all things in the world of Major League Baseball, and you don't want to miss out on that. And shout outs to our other Colorado sports Locked On podcast. We got Locked On Broncos, Avalanche, Nuggets, Buffs, breaking down all things, keeping our eyes on the Nuggets to see if they're doing anything this week as our basketball infused conversation continues. But what I was saying at the end of the first segment there was, when you make a move like this, the Arenado trade, the Luka trade, and the package isn't great, and the impact on the fans is catastrophic. It's how do you win them back? Luckily, I think for the Mavs, not only do they have the championship, they've had the success, they've been able to do stuff. It does sound like, and I'm not a basketball guy, I am a bandwagon Nuggets guy that watches, and follows through social media and time to time when they're on national television. So I'm not providing the great basketball analysis here, but from what I've heard from people talking about it, it sounds like the Mavs are going to be are like okay in a competitive sense of, I mean, they got Anthony Davis, who's a great basketball player, and there's question marks about him, but like if he's playing on the floor, Anthony Davis is a great basketball player. So a major difference between the Arenado trade and the Luka trade is the Rockies didn't get a superstar back. Remember, Austin Gomber, the only one really remaining from the trade for the Rockies, as and the big crown, what the Rockies were looking at as the crown jewel is now playing in international ball. So big difference in the trade there as well. But when you do that stuff, when you just drive this in, when you make a decision that's in the heart of the fans, and then you have disastrous press after it. What a weird press conference that was. And you just make it for those fans that are legitimately betrayed by this. Because again, this is your time, this is your money, this is an investment for you. When you do that to the fans, the only remedy is winning a championship, because look at where the Rockies are at. Declining attendance, a streaming service that isn't all that popular, losing a foothold of a middle of the country market that they could have dominated, and overshadowed now by every single team in the division, with one team in the division casting the biggest shadow. I mean, the Rockies, since trading Nolan Arenado. And there was, in with that last season with Story, they weren't as bad. But in the post Arenado world, the Rockies have been mostly irrelevant. Well, no, the Rockies have been irrelevant. I can say, that last year with Trevor Story's one. No, they still needed 10 more wins to get even, to sniff the playoffs and XYZ. We can't even excuse that. In the post Arenado world, it's been back-to-back 100-loss seasons. Sticking with the same thing, doing the same type of stuff, and again, continuing to just re-emphasize why Rockies fans have lost interest. Why the season ticket package that was a hot ticket throughout my entire childhood, now that group dissolves because the last few years they haven't even been able to fill interest in splitting and getting people to go to like 5 games apiece. These types of moves, and you can spin it however you want as a GM. If you don't win soon after, if you don't put if your team, if your plan doesn't come to fruition sooner rather than later, those scars run deep. And there are going to be a lot of diehard fans that lose interest. And in the grand scheme of things, is that really going to matter probably for the Mavericks? No. I do wonder what it means for the Rockies and what they think. Like, I truly do wonder what they think and what they're thinking about with where they're at. I think the Mavericks are sitting in a situation again with a legacy of success, and not always, but recent with Dirk and all that stuff, and just in the finals last year, playoff caliber team. But you see the clips of the guy taking the beer from Luka when they're celebrating last year, and it's just all the stuff when these trades happen, and like all this type of stuff comes up. The ugly side of sports shows itself. Like it very clearly shows you that again. It's not something. It's not just so easy to just move on from. Like you don't just bring a coffin to the Mavericks stadium. It's a joke, right? It's funny, but it's like you don't go through all that effort because you don't care. And it's so much of the like, oh, it's for the fans. It's like, you get so much smoke blown at you as a fan and being a fan. But then this type of stuff happens, and it reminds you that this is a business for these guys. This is a game of dealing, of deals, transactions, executing your vision, managing personalities. And so when this type of stuff kind of comes up, it just really is one of those things where it's just like, I don't blame people when they lose interest in sports, or like if they stop watching. I also, of course, I watch, I love sports. I have to take this information in. I take these moves in and take, and I factor that into my thoughts and in my viewing, certainly. But you can't blame people for if you're a Mavs fan, and especially say you're a kid, you're growing up, and when are you more passionate about sports than when you're growing up and watching? Like, if your favorite player just got traded and there's only one authentic Rockies jersey in that closet behind, and it's a 28 jersey, when your favorite player gets traded, it changes everything. It changes how you look at the team. It changes how you look at the player. It changes the entire dynamic of being a fan. And not only when your favorite player is traded away, but when it's a player of impact, a player, a best in the league player that was your guy on your team. That one's hard to move on from, because moving on in a free agency is a different story, right? It's, hey, got the bag, got the opportunity, it's a bummer, right? But especially when you're younger and you're like, it's just the money. Don't you have enough money? Where's your loyalty? I mean, I don't know. As I've gotten older, I don't really fault athletes for signing deals that maximize their opportunity, and to go and get the contract that they're looking for, especially if they've won a championship. But it makes it really difficult to just re-sign up for it, to just re-hype yourself up for it, reinvest yourself, and especially in these two sports, where the season is long, multiple months, ups and downs, good stretches, bad stretches. So much is there's so much possible, and so much time, that when you feel like you're let down, when you feel like your team lets you down, it's not surprising that you question that stuff. If you're someone maybe that listens to the pod, and this is your way of keeping up with the Rockies, because you're not, you don't make the time, you're not paying for the streaming service or whatever, I don't blame you. I don't blame Mavs fans for being upset and saying they're not going to watch it. And for those Mavs fans that this will be the moment they stop watching. There will be plenty that still watch. I'm still watching the Rockies. Still watch the Rockies after the trade. But you can't blame the folks that are let down by this, because these type of trades really rattle the relationship between team and fan. And in this modern era of sports and information and everything, I think that relationship is at one of its more interesting points. Sports are still king, though. All right, we got an interesting what if from the YouTube comment section. We're going to finish out the show by reading that coming up next. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast, for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, if you want to be part of the show, head on over to the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section. Hit that subscribe button while you're there. Like the videos too, folks. Really does help. Really does help. I can promise you that when I know it seems weird. I know you're always sitting there like, why do these people say it? It helps that algorithm a ton. Anyway, from the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section, FNL Aviator, we played a little what if last week. What if, imagine if the Cardinals want to trade Arenado as they discussed, and hear me out, he's traded to the Rockies for Chris Bryant. The imagery of an ex-Cub going to the Cardinals, Bryant gets healthy and he has fun again, sees his ex-team, the Cubs, more. We come to find out it's just a change of scenery. Best yet, Nolan is back home without giving up millions again, and he takes back the face of the franchise from the now-retired Blackman. Nolan has a resurgence at offense and defense. He also plays as a DH for Rymack, and others have time at the infield. Hey, a really interesting one, and if that did happen, that would be that would be very storybook-esque here. And talk about, we were just talking about how, what would that do for the fan team relationship there, especially if it pans out for both teams as well. Could be very interesting. I think the thing that people, a win-win situation like that would really kind of make things feel a lot better. Chris Bryant feels better about the way he finishes his career, and gets to be able to do some damage, do a little, get into some pageantry of that division, bring a little joy back to his game. That's a big thing. And then mixed in with the Arenado returning to the Rockies and providing a spark and a little bit of veteran presence that the team uses and lets him bounce back. He gets the benefit from a Coors Field bounce back, and could help the Rockies win some ball games. Don't know if it'd be enough to swing, but if it kept Arenado out of Dodger blue, and I'm all about it. Now, I think if this situation ever was to start building up and whatnot, the Rocky, it wouldn't get done. I don't think Arenado would ever accept a trade back to the Colorado Rockies there. But, I mean, it certainly would be an interesting, that would be a fascinating trade. And just because I think so many people would look at it and be like, Oh, what are they going to do? What's the production like? What is this? What's that? How's it going to look? Who's going to be able to contribute? And who's both of these players have concerns about them. Will Chris Bryant stay healthy? So many people would sit there and be like, will Chris Bryant stay healthy? But it would be amazing if it is just that changes, the Chris Bryant thing to get that last jolt to where he needs to be is another change of scenery. I mean, however, though, like, could Chris Bryant, I mean, it's not a tough media landscape. I mean, Chris Bryant has had to deal with criticism here, but again, in some of those other places and some of those other teams, I just don't know how much Chris Bryant wants to deal with that. But I don't know. I mean, I guess my point though in the real world is I don't want to just keep being down on Chris Bryant. I really, one of the things that I would look forward to the most this year, one of the things that would be one of the more enjoyable things to watch this year would be a good Chris Bryant season. And again, I'm not even saying a Chris Bryant season in which it's got to be all-star or whatever. I'm saying Chris Bryant is just a contributor. Chris Bryant is a positive WAR player. Chris Bryant doing stuff. And I really do think you mentioned that, finding the fun again. I mean, I think the mental part is probably, I really wonder if Chris Bryant could talk to Todd Helton. You know what I mean? Really good players dealing with nagging injuries, changing the landscape of the career in the back end and at altitude. Just to get Todd's perspective on what he did, on just how he handled it. And, and really the case of Todd, like how maybe he didn't handle it. How do you get out of this dark place? And after your whole life has spent full of confidence and it's been rattled these last few years because your body hasn't been able to do what it needs to do. The instrument, your tool that has helped you get to the major leagues and be an MVP has been letting you down the last couple of years. Mixed with, I again think putting him in the outfield is not putting Chris Bryant in a place to succeed. So that's a factor as well. But how do you shake that? And again, one of the best things that can happen for the Rockies is Chris Bryant contributes. And what that definition is will to be determined. Because I'm not counting on it being power. I'm not counting on it, but if it is doubles instead of home runs, if it is hardliners that can let Brenton Doyle hit and score on a hit and run, I'm all about that. I just want to see him on the field, man. This is a guy that has been great. We just want to see it. But thank you so much for that question there. Really do appreciate it there. Would be interesting. Would be really interesting because at this stage, would Arenado benefit? I mean, the defense, he finally didn't win the Gold Glove. We've been seeing cracks in the defense, but making Arenado the everyday DH would be an interesting thing. And it's not like he'd be uncomfortable coming back. Interesting. That's why we play the game. That's why we do the what ifs there. But all right, folks, thank you so much for joining us here on this episode of Locked on Rockies. That's going to wrap it up for today. Remember, you can catch all the action on the Locked on Rockies YouTube channel, and we're free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked on MLB with our guy Sully. He's breaking down all things Major League Baseball. And, of course, like I mentioned before, we got plenty of Colorado sports action coverage for you, especially for the two teams in season right now, the Avalanche and the Nuggets. But you also got Locked on Broncos and Locked on Buffs, free and streaming as well. Until next time, folks, this has been Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked on Rockies podcast.